Hi, Foundations 10. Let's look at what a least common multiple is. The process to finding a least common multiple is very similar to the greatest common factor. Before we can go there, we need to know what these words mean. Least in math simply means smallest. Common, which we already talked about with the greatest common factor, we can think of as shared. It's something that both or all of the numbers in the question have alike. If we talk about you and a best friend, remember I said if I asked you what you have in common, you might talk about a favorite vehicle or a favorite music group or a dislike of math, perhaps, something like that. Multiple. This is where things get confusing usually for students. A multiple is something we find by multiplying. It's always bigger, or at least as big as the number we're working with. For instance, if I ask you to find, let's look at these two things because this is what we confuse, right? Let's look at the factors and the multiples of 12. We looked at factors when we did GCF. The factors of 12 we found to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. These are things that divide into 12. Multiples of 12 always start with the number itself because 12 times 1 is 12. Then one bigger times 2 is 24, 36, 48, and so on. We get these by multiplying by 12. So a least common multiple is going to be the smallest number that is a product, let's go there even, is a product, something you get when you multiply, of each number in the question. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Let's start with an easy example. Let's find the least common multiple of 8 and 15. Now, if we think back to how we found greatest common factor, the process here starts out exactly the same. You need to start by finding the prime factorizations of each of the numbers in the question. So let's think about 8. The smallest prime number that goes into 8 is 2. It goes in 4 times, and we work our way down until we see that 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. Do the same thing with 15. Smallest prime number to go into there is 3. It goes in 5 times. So 15 is simply 3 times 5. Now here's where it gets interesting, I guess. Look for numbers common and the leftovers. If we tried to do a common factor here, problem, when I write these out like we did with the GCF, and I ask you to circle what's in common in these two lists, there is nothing. Absolutely nothing is circlable between these two. However, when we talk about an LCM, see that L? You have to remember to include the leftovers. The least common multiple of 8 and 15 is, we need the 2, and this 2, and this 2. We also need this 3 and this 5. So the least common multiple is 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24, times 5 should be 120, I think, if I've done the math right. The smallest multiple of 8 and 15, meaning if I took 8 and wrote out all of the multiples, 8, 16, 24, and so on, working my way along, somewhere on this list is 120. If I did the same with 15, 15, 30, 45, and so on, somewhere on this list is 120. This is the smallest, the smallest number that is a multiple of both 8 and 15. Okay, let's look at another one. Find the least common multiple of 18 and 42. So let's break down 18. Let's break down 42. Now you see the difference in this question and the previous one. We see some things in common. How do we deal with those when we're talking about a least common multiple? Start like we did with our GCF in recognizing that because that's in both lists, we better use it. Because this 3 is in both lists, we better use it. Now, what's left over? I see another 3. And I see a 7. My least common multiple has to include all of those things. Multiply those all together. I'm going to cheat. Maybe. If you multiply, you get 126. The least common multiple of those two numbers is 126. Again, if you think about it, if we wrote out the multiples, somewhere in this list is 126. Same thing with 42. And those shouldn't be equal signs because they're not equal. And in fact, 126 would be right there. That's the smallest number on both of those lists. Now, what happens if I give you 3 numbers to work with? Start the same way. Break down each of the numbers in the question. Um, 28 is 2, 2 and 7, and of course 35 is just 5 and a 7. Write these out, all 3 of them, and I like to organize it smallest to largest so that I don't have to hunt for things later when I'm looking for things in common. And the 35 is 3 times 5. Now, start the same process. Look for things that are common. Problem, there's nothing in common to all 3. However, this 2 is shared. Only list it once. This 2 is shared. Only list it once. The 3 has to be a part of my LCM. So does this 5. Now what do I do with that 7? Don't forget. Least common multiple, include your leftovers. That 7 matters. The least common multiple of 60, 28, and 35 is whatever I get when I multiply those out, which is 420. How do you do that in your head? There's 4, 12, and I know that's 60. 60 times 7 is 420. Find combinations that work in your head for you. The least common multiple of 60, 28, and 35 is 420. Go back to your notes now. There's a couple of examples in there laid out as well. Then there's some textbook questions at the end. If you need any more help with any of this, or you want more examples or another worksheet, for instance, be sure to contact me. Hop on Google Talk and we'll sort that out.